Hey guys, Jordan here, and today I want to do another action figure review. So today I'll be looking at the Batman animated series Mask of the Phantasm 2-pack featuring Batman and the Phantasm. So if you haven't seen this Mask of the Phantasm animated film, I definitely recommend you do so, whether you're a fan of the animated series or a fan of Batman in general. For it's probably my favourite Batman film, like full stop, regardless of being animated or not. But yeah, with that being said, let's get into the review of Batman and the Phantasm. So now we can have a look at the packaging. We can see it's a nice window box package we get here, in which both figures will be clearly displayed. In the back of the box, you can see behind behind the Phantasm there, we get a nice image of the Phantasm, as you can see there, and the Batman underneath that. As you can see, it says here, Mask of the Phantasm, Batman the Animated Movie. We get the DC Collectibles logo in the corner there. And on the side of the box here, we get Batman and Phantasm. And you can see that this is number 22 in the series, as you can see there. And sculpted by, sorry I can't get that to focus, but sculpted by Irene Matar. And on the back, pretty flat grey, some warnings here, and a nice image of the Phantasm, and on this side another image of the Phantasm, and then all the information, DC Collectibles, Batman Mask of the Phantasm Animated Movie, and Batman and Phantasm. Okay, with that being said, let's open it up and have a look at the figures themselves. So for Batman, as we can see here, we get two fisted hands, two gripping hands, and one batarang. And we can see we get this nice turnaround figure stand with an image of the figure itself, some art there, and an adjustable C-clamp. So a little light in accessories, but I don't know what else you would really want in particular. With that being said, let's have a look at the accessories for the Phantasm. So the Phantasm is quite light in accessories. All we get here is two left hands, one in a sort of open gripping pose and the other kind of in a grabbing pose, although it doesn't come with anything to grab. I suppose you could put a batarang in that hand, although it never really happened in the movie, but you get the same sort of figure stand turnaround here, which is quite nice. It says Phantasm on it, we get a nice turnaround image of the Phantasm, and we get the same adjustable C-clamp. So now we'll go ahead and have a look at first the figure of Batman. Okay, so getting into the Batman figure, quite a nice figure I think. The style of it's done very well anyway. We get a nice sculpted bat logo here. As you can see, it's from the first series of the Batman animated series. And so we get this nice bat logo here. The face, I do think is done quite well here. I'll just get that to focus, there we go. I think the face is done nicely here. Nice pointed ears, although I don't think they should break, but what they are genuinely quite sharp. We get the nice white eye detail here along with a nice mouth. However, maybe a bit more paint on the mouth would have made it stand out a bit more. It does just look a bit like he has some like kind of face skin and then some teeth and no lips. But that's neither here nor there. A nice sculpted cowl with the shoulders here. This is sculpted in, however it's a soft plastic so it won't hinder the articulation. Moving on, we get a nice sculpted belt here. It doesn't move at all, but it does hide the waist swivel quite well, and is a nice piece. We get the painted shorts here. Moving on to the grey kind of leggings, and then some nice black sculpted boots and very pointed toes, as you can see. On the cape, we get a nice black on the back and blue on the inside, which I think is a nice look. The cape's quite a rubbery kind of vinyl material, so it does flex a fair bit, which is quite nice looking at it from the back. Yeah, as you can see, it flexes quite nicely, and it's about the right length. As you can see, comes down to essentially the top of his boots here, and we see it's nice pointed decal as seen in the animated series. Also here, which I think is quite a nice touch, we can see that the kind of the shoulder points here do actually kind of raise into those and raises into the rest of the cowl here, which I think is a nice touch. It just looks a bit more like someone wearing it. It helps the cape look to flow a bit better. So overall, the style of the figure, very nice. Now let's have a look at the articulation. Now, if you've had these figures before, you know they are more style over articulation, but the articulation isn't the worst I've seen. In terms of the head, we can get the full 360 degrees, although, well, if you have obviously having them looking at that angle is a little bit funny, but so it's on a kind of ball peg there. So you can look up. Actually, not too bad an amount, not amazing. You can look down a tiny bit, not huge amounts, and that's that back there. Moving on to the arms, comes out at a bend, not quite, maybe 90 degrees. A full ball there, so you can get the full 360 degree rotation in the arm there. In terms of the elbow, it is a single joint. It does move down quite far, but it does look a bit strange depending on how you pose it, so not amazing there, but it's not the worst. And on the hand you get a hinge and a rotation, which is fine for purposes. So yeah, just the way the arms are sculpted is it can look a bit strange, but it's not the worst articulation. Obviously same on the other arm, you get the bend out the way, the full rotation at the bicep and at the shoulder there, although it can be a bit stiff, so be careful of that. So full rotation, same hinge, not quite 90 degrees, and then hinge at the hand and a wrist swivel. As you can see, we get a waist swivel here, although you don't want to, it doesn't look too bad, but you can see there's a bit of gappage here where it's just belt and no stomach. It doesn't look terrible, but it's quite noticeable in some angles, so you don't want to twist them too far, I wouldn't say. Now moving on to the legs, and the legs are always done very strangely on these. They have these gaping kind of pits here. It's not so bad on this figure, but it does still look a bit strange to me, so you don't really, like, you can get the full splits going on, but I don't think you would want to. It does look quite odd. In terms of kicking, you can get kicking forward to about 90 degrees, and kicking back a fair amount as well actually, and not too bad there. Same on the other leg obviously. No thigh swivel unfortunately. A single jointed knee, which, you know, it's not the best looking of things, so you wouldn't really want to be doing too much with that. You can get some basic kicks, but there's not massive amounts you can do with the legs there. No boot swivel either, or ankle swivel, so all you can do is a hinge on the ankle there, and a very tiny amount of ankle rocker. So as you can see, the articulation isn't the strong point of this figure, it's more style over articulation, but I do think it's a very nice piece if you're just going to put it, either leave it in the package or some very basic poses, as you'll see maybe later on. So with that being said, let's move on to the Phantasm. So moving on to the Phantasm figure, we can see, we'll compare the heights here. So we can see that they stand roughly about the same height. Maybe the Phantasm's hold on, just move this arm out of the way. And maybe Batman's a little bit taller, which makes sense in the context of the film if you've seen it. So yeah, with the Phantasm, I think the styling is done very nicely. We get this nice flowing cape look, kind of windblown, with this curling round the leg, which kind of helps to give the kind of misty and mysterious vibe of the Phantasm as seen in the film. We get a nice hood, and this whole grey top bit, I believe, is glued on in some parts, all one piece all the way down to the cape, and over the hood as well. The hood's nice and soft with a bit of space, so it doesn't hinder the articulation too badly, although you don't really want to move the head too much because it can look quite funny if you move it far too much. Anyway, moving on to the details, we get one hand is just a kind of cuffed hand with a fist, the other is the claw, as you can see here. and that's the only hand you get for this side. You don't get a replaceable hand, but it makes sense because this is quite an iconic part of the figure. The rest of it's mainly it's all just black and grey with a similar whited out eye theme to Batman. The face is done very well, I think. It's quite simple, but the design is simple in the movie, so you wouldn't expect much more. And the boots are quite nicely cuffed and all done in a grey plastic as well. Looking at the back, you get this nice kind of cape being separate from the top piece again. The hood coming down like that and clearly defined shoulders. So that does look quite nice. Overall the sculpt is very nice and the details on it are also very good. The paint is done well, although it's a bit sparing. It's mainly just the plastic and the rubber. And the kind of overall dark theme to this in terms of colour palette. So moving on to articulation, it's very similar to Batman. The head could do a 360, but as I said, you don't want to move it too much because it can look a bit funny with the hood being there. You can remove the hood, but that never happened in the movie, so unless you desperately want the Phantasm to look to the right for some reason, I don't think you'd move the hood. Luckily the shoulders are soft, so don't hinder the articulation. So we get the full bend out to the right like that, and as seen with Batman, a single jointed elbow, which to me in this figure doesn't look as weird. I don't know why, maybe it's just because of the cuff, or maybe it's covered up more, but the bend doesn't look as funny. Of course, in the same vein, you get the wrist hinge and rotation. It can also do the 360, and is actually not hindered at all by this shoulder piece. It's very soft, and it does seem to allow for a good range of movement, so I'm quite a fan of that. We get a kind of a waist swivel here, which does go all the way around. But again, you get the kind of gappage problem. It's not as prominent in this figure, partly because this bit covers it up. But if you twist it too far, you can start to see some gaps, and it can look a bit funny. The same kind of gaping, weird angle legs that you wouldn't really want to move out too far. No thigh swivel on this either. Kick forward that far, and backwards very far actually. So that's quite nice. Single jointed knee as well. Again, they're not the best at covering these up, but they're not terrible. They serve a purpose, I suppose. Boot rotation in this one actually, which we didn't see with Batman. So a bit of extra there, which is quite nice. And hinged ankles, but again, no real ankle rocker. So it kind of, with the fact there's no ankle rocker, it kind of makes moving the legs out useless. I suppose there is the stand, but the stands aren't amazing for holding the figure up entirely. They do a decent job, but they're not the best. But anyway, I would say these figures are more for style over dynamic poses or articulation, although you can get some kind of poses going if you use the stands, as I'll show you later. But overall, I would say these figures are a very good representation of the film. They capture the likenesses very well, and I'm quite a fan of these. I'm more of an in-package collector myself, although these ones I'll be displaying outside the packages. But anyway, with that being said, I'll bring this video to a close. I'll move into a slideshow of some of the poses of the figures. Thanks very much for what. Actually, before I do that, I will just say that these figures are on a 6-inch scale and just stand almost exactly 6 inches tall, and are roughly in scale with each other, I do believe. So with that being said, I'll bring this video to a close. I would recommend these figures for anyone that's a fan of the animated series, and definitely anyone who's a fan of the movie. If you haven't seen the movie, please go watch it. And with that being said, thanks very much, and I'll see you guys later.